Eleanor Grayson stood on the cobblestone path outside the Rosewood Manor, her breath catching in the cool evening air. At 70, she carried herself with the grace of a woman who had weathered life's storms and emerged stronger. Her silver hair gleamed under the soft glow of the venue's lanterns, and her navy dress, simple yet elegant, hugged her slender frame. But her heart was a battlefield of hurt and defiance. The muffled laughter and music from inside the grand hall felt like a slap, each note reminding her of the humiliation she'd just endured. It was supposed to be a celebration. Her son, Michael, and his wife, Vanessa, were hosting a lavish gala to mark their 10th anniversary. Eleanor had been thrilled when the invitation arrived. A cream-colored card with gold embossing, promising an evening of joy. She'd spent weeks choosing the perfect dress, practicing her toast, imagining the pride in Michael's eyes as she stood by his side. But the night had unraveled before it even began. Vanessa had greeted her at the entrance with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Eleanor, this is a younger crowd tonight," she'd said, her voice syrupy but sharp. "We're keeping things modern. You understand, don't you?" Before Eleanor could respond, Vanessa had gestured toward the door, her manicured hand dismissive. "Maybe it's best if you sit this one out." "Sit it out." The words stung like a wasp's bite. Eleanor had blinked, her mouth opening to protest. But Vanessa was already turning away, her sleek blonde hair catching the chandelier's light as she rejoined the party. 2 security guards appeared, their faces impassive, and escorted Eleanor out. The door closed behind her with a soft thud, sealing her out of her son's world. Now, standing alone, Eleanor felt the weight of rejection settle into her bones. She wasn't just Michael's mother, she was the woman who'd raised him single-handedly after his father left, who'd worked double shifts at the library to pay for his college, who'd cheered at every milestone. And yet, here she was, cast aside like an outdated relic. But Eleanor Grayson was no relic. Her hands tightened around her purse, her knuckles whitening. She thought of her late husband, Thomas, whose laughter had once filled their modest home. He'd always said she had a fire in her, a spark that could light up the darkest room. That fire was still there, smoldering beneath the hurt. Vanessa might have thrown her out, but Eleanor wasn't done yet. She turned, her heels clicking against the cobblestones as she walked toward her car. The Rosewood Manor loomed behind her, its ivy-covered walls and glowing windows a symbol of everything she'd been denied. An idea began to form, audacious and wild, like a seed taking root in cracked earth. She'd spent decades building a life from nothing, savings carefully tucked away, investments made with a librarian's precision. She had means, more than Vanessa or even Michael knew. And she had resolve. The next morning, Eleanor sat at her kitchen table, her laptop open and a cup of chamomile tea cooling beside her. She'd spent the night sleepless, her mind racing with possibilities. The Rosewood Manor was owned by a local real estate firm, one she'd dealt with years ago when she'd sold her old house. A quick search confirmed it was on the market, overpriced. Perhaps, but within her reach. Her savings, bolstered by a shrewd investment in a tech startup a decade ago, gave her leverage. She dialed the firm's number, her voice steady as she inquired about the property. "Mrs. Grayson, it's a significant purchase." The agent, a young man named Daniel, said cautiously, "Are you sure you want to move this quickly?" "I've never been sure," Eleanor replied, her tone leaving no room for doubt. "Draw up the papers." By noon, she was in Daniel's office, signing documents that transferred ownership of the Rosewood Manor to her name. The weight of the pen in her hand felt like a scepter, a symbol of reclaiming her dignity. She didn't just want the venue, she wanted to rewrite the story of that night. Vanessa had humiliated her, but Eleanor would turn the tables. The gala had been a one-night event, but the manor was booked for another party the following weekend, a charity ball Vanessa was co-hosting to cement her status among the city's elite. Eleanor smiled to herself as she left the office, keys to the manor jingling in her purse. She wasn't just buying a building. She was buying a moment. Over the next few days, Eleanor worked tirelessly. She contacted the charity ball's organizers, presenting herself as the new owner of the venue. "I'd like to host," she said simply, her voice warm but firm. The organizers, unaware of the personal drama, were thrilled. Eleanor's reputation as a respected community member preceded her, and her offer to cover additional costs sealed the deal. She hired a team to redecorate the manor, replacing Vanessa's gaudy floral arrangements with elegant lilies and soft lighting that evoked warmth and inclusivity. She also reached out to Michael. Her son's voice was hesitant when he answered her call. "Mom, I'm so sorry about the other night," he said, guilt lacing his words. "Vanessa, she got carried away. I should have stopped her." Eleanor's heart softened at his apology, but she kept her tone neutral. "It's done, Michael. But I'd like you to come to the charity ball next weekend. Bring Vanessa." He agreed, unaware of the surprise awaiting them. Eleanor hung up, her resolve hardening. She wasn't doing this out of spite, not entirely. She wanted to show Vanessa, and perhaps herself, that age didn't diminish worth. She wanted to remind Michael of the strength that ran through their family, a strength he'd forgotten under Vanessa's influence. The night of the charity ball arrived, and Eleanor stood at the entrance of the Rosewood Manor, now her domain. She wore a deep emerald gown that shimmered under the chandeliers. Her silver hair swept into an elegant updo. Guests streamed in, their faces alight with admiration for the transformed venue. Eleanor greeted each one with a smile, her presence commanding yet warm. She was no longer the woman cast out. She was the host, the heart of the evening. When Michael and Vanessa arrived, Eleanor saw the shock on their faces. Vanessa's perfect composure faltered, her eyes darting from the redecorated hall to Eleanor's serene expression. Michael's jaw tightened, a mix of pride and confusion in his gaze. "Mom," he whispered, stepping forward. "What? How?" Eleanor took his hand, her touch gentle but firm. "This is my place now," she said softly, "and you're both welcome here." Vanessa's lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, Eleanor saw uncertainty in her daughter-in-law's eyes. The evening unfolded flawlessly. Speeches were given, funds were raised, and Eleanor moved through the crowd with a quiet power. She didn't need to gloat. Her presence was enough. She'd taken a moment of rejection and turned it into one of triumph. Not just for herself, but for every person who'd ever been dismissed for their age or their quiet strength. As the night drew to a close, Eleanor stood on the manor's balcony, overlooking the gardens. Michael joined her, his tie loosened, his expression heavy with unspoken apologies. "I didn't realize how much I'd let you down," he said. "I'm so proud of you, Mom." Eleanor looked at him, her eyes softening. "It's not about pride, Michael. It's about knowing your worth and never letting anyone take it from you." Below, the party continued, laughter and music rising into the night. Eleanor Grayson, at 70, had reclaimed her place not just in the manor, but in her own story. And she wasn't done yet. The days following the charity ball were a whirlwind for Eleanor Grayson. The Rosewood Manor, now hers, hummed with potential. She walked its halls each morning, her footsteps echoing against the polished wood floors, envisioning not just a venue but a legacy. The hurt from Vanessa's rejection still lingered, a quiet ache in her chest. But it was overshadowed by a newfound purpose. She wasn't just the owner of a building. She was the architect of a new chapter in her life. Eleanor's mornings began early, with a cup of chamomile tea and a notebook where she jotted down ideas. The manor could be more than a place for parties. It could be a community hub, a space where people of all ages could gather, learn, and celebrate. She imagined workshops for seniors, art classes for children, and lectures that bridged generations. The vision felt like a rebellion against the dismissal she'd faced, a way to prove that age was no barrier to impact. But first, she had to navigate her relationship with Michael and Vanessa. Her son had called daily since the ball, his voice heavy with regret. "Mom, I can't believe you pulled that off," he said during one call, his tone a mix of awe and guilt. "Vanessa's been quiet. I think she's embarrassed." Eleanor listened, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. "She should be," she said, not unkindly. "But this isn't about her, Michael. It's about user family, our values. I need you to understand that." Michael promised to visit soon, alone, to talk things over. Eleanor agreed, though her heart was wary. She loved her son fiercely, but his loyalty had been split for years, caught between his mother's quiet strength and his wife's ambition. She hoped this moment would realign him, remind him of the woman who'd raised him to value kindness over status. Meanwhile, Eleanor threw herself into transforming the manor. She hired a small team of local artisans, a young event planner named Clara, and a retired carpenter named George who shared her vision. Together, they began reshaping the space. The gaudy chandeliers Vanessa had favored were replaced with simpler, modern fixtures that cast a warm glow. The walls, once a sterile white, were painted in soft earth tones, inviting and timeless. Eleanor insisted on accessibility ramps for wheelchairs, large print signage, and seating areas designed for comfort. Clara, barely 30 but brimming with energy, became Eleanor's right hand. "You're not like anyone I've ever met," Clara said one afternoon as they sorted through fabric swatches for new curtains. "Most people your age would be slowing down, but you're just getting started." Eleanor smiled, her eyes crinkling. "Slowing down is for people who've given up, Clara. I'm not there yet." The community began to notice. Local papers ran stories about the new Rosewood Manor, praising Eleanor's vision. Invitations to community groups poured in, and she accepted them all, speaking at senior centers, libraries, and even a high school history class. She shared her story, not the details of Vanessa's cruelty, but the broader truth that age didn't diminish your ability to dream or act. People listened, their faces lighting up with recognition. She wasn't just speaking for herself. She was speaking for every person who'd been told they were too old to matter. Yet, not everything was smooth. Vanessa's silence was deafening, and Eleanor knew it wasn't over. A week after the ball, a mutual acquaintance let slip that Vanessa was planning another event, a fundraiser at a rival venue. It was a clear attempt to reclaim her social standing, to prove she didn't need the Rosewood Manor. Eleanor felt a flicker of irritation, but she pushed it aside. Let Vanessa play her games. Eleanor had bigger plans. One evening, as she reviewed budgets with Clara, the phone rang. It was Michael, his voice urgent. "Mom, I need to see you. Tonight. It's about Vanessa." Eleanor's heart sank, but she agreed. An hour later, Michael sat across from her in the manor's cozy library, his face drawn. "She's furious, Mom," he said. "She thinks you bought the manor to humiliate her. She's talking about selling our house, moving somewhere new, starting over." Eleanor's breath caught. "And you? What do you think?" Michael ran a hand through his hair, his eyes tired. I think I've let her control too much. I didn't see it before. But you're my mom. You've always been there. I don't want to lose you. The words were a bomb. But Eleanor knew they were only a start. Then show it. Michael, she said gently. Not with words, but with actions. Be here. Be part of this. He nodded. And for the first time in years, Eleanor saw the boy she'd raised, the one who'd clung to her hand during thunderstorms, who'd promised to make her proud. They talked late into the night. Not just about Vanessa, but about the past. The sacrifices. The love that had always bound them. When he left, Eleanor felt lighter, as if a piece of her heart had been returned. The next day, she threw herself back into her work. The Manor's first community event was approaching, to storytelling night, where seniors would share their life stories with younger generations. Eleanor spent hours curating the lineup, ensuring every voice, from the retired teacher to the former mechanic, would be heard. She wanted the Manor to be a place where stories lived, where people like her weren't cast aside but celebrated. As the event drew closer, Eleanor received an unexpected visitor, Vanessa. She stood in the Manor's foyer, her designer coat draped over her arm, her face a mask of forced calm. Eleanor, she said, her voice tight. We need to talk. Eleanor gestured to a nearby chair, her expression neutral. Of course. Sit. Vanessa hesitated, then sat, her posture rigid. I underestimated you. She began, her words clipped. I didn't think you'd do all this. But you've made your point. Let's move on. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. Move on. Vanessa, this isn't a game. This is my life. My home. My purpose. Vanessa's mask slipped, revealing a flicker of vulnerability. Michael's been distant. He's talking about you all the time now, your strength, your vision. I don't know how to compete with that. Eleanor leaned forward, her voice soft but firm. It's not a competition. It's about respect. For me. For Michael. For yourself. You're part of this family. Vanessa. Act like it. The conversation ended without resolution, but Eleanor felt a shift. Vanessa's visit wasn't an apology, but it was a crack in her armor. For the first time, Eleanor saw her not as an adversary, but as a woman struggling with her own insecurities. It didn't erase the hurt, but it gave Eleanor hope, not for reconciliation, but for change. The storytelling night arrived, and the Manor glowed with warmth. Seniors filled the main hall, their faces alight with anticipation. Teenagers sat cross-legged on cushions, their phones forgotten as they listened to tales of love, loss, and resilience. Eleanor watched from the back, her heart swelling. This was what she'd fought for, not just a venue, but a space where every voice mattered. As the final story ended, a young girl approached Eleanor, her eyes wide. My grandma says you're a hero, she said shyly. Is that true? Eleanor laughed softly, kneeling to meet the girl's gaze. No, sweetheart. I'm just someone who decided to keep going. The night was a success, and as the guests left, Eleanor stood alone in the hall, the echoes of their stories lingering. She'd turned rejection into creation, pain into purpose. But she knew the journey wasn't over. Vanessa, Michael, the Manor, they were all part of a story still unfolding. And Eleanor Grayson was ready for whatever came next. The success of the storytelling night rippled through the community, and the Rosewood Manor became a beacon of connection. Eleanor Grayson found herself busier than ever, fielding calls from local organizations eager to partner with her. The Manor was no longer just a venue. It was a symbol of resilience, a place where people of all ages could find belonging. Yet, beneath her outward triumph, Eleanor carried a quiet tension. Vanessa's visit had left her unsettled, and Michael's promises, though heartfelt, had yet to translate into action. Each morning, Eleanor walked the manor's grounds, her silver hair catching the dawn light. The gardens, once overgrown, were now vibrant, thanks to a team of volunteers she'd rallied. She paused by a rose bush, its petals a deep crimson, and thought of her late husband, Thomas. He'd loved roses, always tucking one behind her ear during their walks. "You're my fire, Ellie," he'd say. That fire was still burning, but it was tempered now by wisdom and a touch of weariness. Clara, the young event planner, became Eleanor's confidant. Over coffee in the manor's kitchen, Clara shared her own struggles, a demanding job, a strained relationship with her mother. "You make it look easy," Clara said one day, stirring sugar into her cup. "Taking on the world at your age." Eleanor chuckled, her eyes crinkling. "It's not easy, Clara. It's just necessary. You don't stop living because life gets hard." Their conversations often turned to the manor's next event, a senior talent showcase. Eleanor envisioned a night of music, dance, and art, where older adults could shine. She reached out to the community, recruiting participants: a retired jazz pianist, a former ballerina, even a painter who'd taken up watercolors in her 80s. The event was a chance to challenge stereotypes, to show that creativity didn't fade with age. But as the showcase approached, tension with Vanessa resurfaced. Michael called one evening, his voice strained. "Mom, Vanessa's hosting another event the same night as your showcase. It's at the Grand Hotel. She's calling it a modern arts gala." Eleanor's grip tightened on the phone. She recognized the move for what it was: a deliberate attempt to overshadow her. Vanessa wasn't just competing. She was trying to erase Eleanor's presence. "Does she know about the showcase?" Eleanor asked. "She knows," Michael admitted. "I told her it was important to you. She didn't care." The words stung, but Eleanor kept her voice steady. "Then let her have her gala. We'll have ours." She hung up, her mind racing. Part of her wanted to confront Vanessa, to demand an explanation, but she knew it would only fuel the conflict. Instead, she channeled her energy into the showcase. She worked late into the night, polishing details with Clara and George, ensuring every performer felt valued. She wrote personal notes to each participant, thanking them for their courage. The act of writing grounded her, reminding her of the bigger picture. The night of the showcase arrived, and the manor buzzed with excitement. The hall was filled with folding chairs, each one occupied by a mix of seniors, families, and young people drawn by the manor's growing reputation. Eleanor stood at the front, her emerald gown replaced by a tailored blazer and skirt, her silver hair swept back. She welcomed the crowd with a warmth that belied the storm in her heart. The performances were breathtaking. The jazz pianist, a man named Harold with gnarled hands, played a melody that brought tears to the audience's eyes. The ballerina, now in her 70s, moved with a grace that defied time. And the painter, her watercolors displayed on easels, shared stories of finding joy in art after losing her husband. Eleanor watched from the wings, her chest tight with pride. This was her vision come to Lithia's celebration of resilience, of lives well lived. Halfway through the evening, Michael slipped into the hall. He stood at the back, his face a mix of awe and guilt. Eleanor caught his eye and offered a small nod, her heart lifting. He'd chosen to be here, not at Vanessa's gala. It was a start. After the final performance, the crowd erupted in applause, and Eleanor took the stage to thank everyone. Her voice was steady, but her words carried the weight of her journey. Tonight isn't just about talent, she said. It's about refusing to be invisible. Every person here has a story, a spark, a reason to keep going. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The audience stood, their cheers echoing through the manor. Michael approached her afterward, his eyes bright. Mom, this was incredible. I'm so sorry I didn't see it sooner. Eleanor squeezed his hand. You're here now? That's what matters. But the night wasn't without its shadows. A local reporter, covering the event, mentioned Vanessa's gala in passing. It's packed, she said casually. Lots of influencers, big donors. They're calling it the event of the season. Eleanor's smile didn't falter, but her heart sank. Vanessa was still fighting, still trying to outshine her. The reporter's words lingered as Eleanor locked up the manor that night, the silence heavy around her. She wondered if Vanessa would ever see her as more than a threat, if Michael would ever fully break free from his wife's influence. The next morning, Clara burst into the manor with a newspaper in hand. Eleanor, you need to see this. The front page featured a glowing review of the talent showcase, with a photo of Harold at the piano and Eleanor smiling beside him. The headline read, Rosewood Manor redefines community with heart and soul. Eleanor read the article, her eyes misting. The reporter hadn't mentioned Vanessa's gala at all. For the first time, Eleanor felt the tide shifting. The community wasn't just noticing her work, they were embracing it. She wasn't competing with Vanessa. She was building something bigger, something that mattered. That afternoon, she sat down with Michael for coffee. He looked more relaxed than he had in weeks, his shoulders less tense. I talked to Vanessa last night, he said. I told her I'm done letting her push you away. I want to help with the manor. Mom, I want to be part of this. Eleanor studied him, searching for the resolve behind his words. It won't be easy, she said. Vanessa won't like it. I know, he replied. But I'm choosing you. And I'm choosing me. The conversation marked a turning point. But Eleanor knew the road ahead would be rocky. Vanessa's silence was a storm waiting to break, and Eleanor braced herself for the fallout. Still, she felt a quiet strength. The manor was hers, not just in ownership, but in spirit. It was a place where she could rewrite her story, where she could show the world and herself that age was no barrier to purpose. As she walked through the manor that evening, checking the lights and locking the doors, Eleanor felt Thomas's presence, like a warm hand on her shoulder. She smiled, her heart full. She'd faced rejection, humiliation, and doubt, but she'd emerged stronger. The Rosewood Manor wasn't just a venue. It was her legacy, a testament to a woman who refused to be cast aside. The weeks following the talent showcase were a blur of activity for Eleanor Grayson. The Rosewood Manor had become a hub of community life, with bookings for events stretching months into the future. Eleanor's vision was taking shape: workshops, book clubs, even a weekly coffee morning for seniors and students to share stories. Each event felt like a brick in the foundation of something lasting, something that could outlive her. Yet, the shadow of Vanessa's resentment loomed, a quiet threat that Eleanor couldn't ignore. Mornings at the manor were Eleanor's favorite time. She'd arrive before dawn, unlocking the heavy oak doors and breathing in the scent of polished wood and fresh flowers. The silence was a canvas, ready for the day's possibilities. She'd sit in the library, her notebook open, sketching out ideas for new programs. A gardening club for seniors, perhaps, or a mentorship program pairing retirees with young entrepreneurs. The ideas flowed freely, fueled by a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Clara, ever the optimist, was her partner in this whirlwind. "You're building an empire," Clara teased one morning. Her laptop opened to a spreadsheet of upcoming events. The Eleanor Grayson Empire. Eleanor laughed, shaking her head. "Not an empire, Clara. A home." But not everyone saw it that way. Vanessa's absence was conspicuous, her silence a calculated move. Michael had been true to his word, visiting the manor regularly to help with small tasks, moving tables, hanging decorations, even speaking at a community meeting about the importance of intergenerational connection. His presence warmed Eleanor's heart, but she saw the strain in his eyes. Vanessa's disapproval was a weight he carried, one Eleanor couldn't lift for him. One afternoon, as Eleanor and Clara reviewed plans for a winter festival, a letter arrived. It was from Vanessa, written in her precise, elegant handwriting. Eleanor's fingers hesitated before opening it, her heart bracing for confrontation. The letter was brief but sharp. "Eleanor, your little stunt with the manor has caused enough trouble. Michael is my husband, and this family is mine. Stop interfering, or I'll make sure you regret it." The words were a punch, but Eleanor's hands were steady as she set the letter down. Clara, who'd read over her shoulder, frowned. "She's scared," Clara said. "She's losing control, and she knows it." Eleanor nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. Vanessa's threat wasn't just about the manor, it was about Michael, about the fragile bond Eleanor was rebuilding with her son. She knew she had to tread carefully, not for her own sake, but for his. She folded the letter and tucked it into a drawer, resolving to focus on the festival. She wouldn't let Vanessa's words derail her. The winter festival was ambitious, a weekend of music, crafts, and storytelling, designed to bring the community together during the coldest months. Eleanor enlisted local schools, churches, and businesses, creating a coalition that felt like a small army. She spent evenings calling vendors, negotiating discounts, and personally inviting every senior who'd attended her previous events. The work was exhausting, but it kept her grounded, a reminder of why she'd fought for the manor in the first place. Michael joined her one evening, helping string fairy lights across the manor's courtyard. The air was crisp, the sky a deep indigo. "This place is magic, Mom," he said, his breath visible in the cold. "I wish I'd seen it sooner." Eleanor smiled, her heart aching with love. "You see it now? That's enough." But the conversation turned serious as they sat on a bench, the lights twinkling above. "Vanessa's not herself," Michael admitted. "She's obsessed with proving she's still relevant. She thinks you're taking that from her." Eleanor's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm not taking anything, Michael. I'm building something. There's a difference." He nodded, but his eyes were distant. "She's talking about leaving, Mom. Not just the sit time." The confession hung between them, heavy and cold. Eleanor reached for his hand, her touch steady. "You can't control her choices, Michael, but you can make your own. What do you want?" He looked at her, his face vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen since he was a boy. "I want to be here, with you, with this. I want to make things right." Eleanor squeezed his hand, her heart swelling. "Then stay. Help me build this. Not for me, but for you." The festival arrived, and the manor transformed into a winter wonderland. Snow dusted the grounds, and the halls glowed with candles and evergreen boughs. Children laughed as they built snowmen, while seniors shared hot cider and stories by the fire. Eleanor moved through the crowd, her presence a quiet anchor. She wore a deep blue coat, her silver hair catching the light. And everywhere she went, People thanked her not just for the event, but for giving them a place to belong. Michael was there, too, helping with the setup and even emceeing a storytelling session. His laughter echoed through the hall, a sound Eleanor hadn't heard in years. But Vanessa's absence was noticeable, a void that cast a shadow over the joy. Eleanor pushed it aside, focusing on the moment, the music, the warmth, the community she'd created. That night, as the festival wound down, Eleanor received a call from a local reporter. "Mrs. Grayson, we're hearing rumors that Vanessa's gala flopped," the reporter said. "Half the guests left early to come to your festival. Care to comment?" Eleanor's heart skipped, but she kept her voice calm. "I'm just glad people found their way here," she said. "The manor's open to everyone." The call left her uneasy. Vanessa's failure wasn't a victory, it was a spark that could ignite more conflict. She sat in the library, the fire crackling, and thought of the letter in her drawer. Vanessa wasn't done fighting, and Eleanor knew the next move would be hers. The following morning, Michael arrived with news. "Vanessa wants to meet," he said, his voice tense. "She says she's ready to talk. But I don't know if it's a truce or a trap." Eleanor met his gaze, her resolve unwavering. "Let's find out." They agreed to meet at a neutral location, a quiet cafe downtown. Eleanor dressed carefully, choosing a tailored gray coat that felt like armor. She didn't know what Vanessa wanted, but she knew one thing: she wouldn't back down. The manor, the community, her bond with Michael, they were worth fighting for. As she left the manor, locking the doors behind her, Eleanor felt a surge of determination. She'd faced rejection and risen above it. Whatever Vanessa had planned, Eleanor was ready. The Rosewood Manor wasn't just a building. It was her heart, her legacy, her proof that no one could cast her out again. The cafe was a small, unassuming place, its windows fogged from the winter chill. Eleanor Grayson sat at a corner table, her gray coat draped over the chair, her hands folded calmly in her lap. Across from her, Vanessa sat rigid, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, her eyes guarded. Michael was there too, his presence a quiet bridge between the two women. The air was thick with unspoken tension, each sip of coffee a pause in a conversation that could shift everything. Eleanor had prepared for this moment, replaying Vanessa's letter in her mind. The threat had been clear, but so was Eleanor's resolve. She wasn't here to gloat or fight, she was here to protect what she'd built. Not just for herself, but for Michael and the community that had embraced the Rosewood Manor. Vanessa spoke first, her voice low but sharp. "You've made quite a splash, Eleanor. The whole town's talking about your little manor." Eleanor met her gaze, unflinching. "It's not little, Vanessa. And it's not just mine. It belongs to everyone who walks through its doors." Vanessa's lips tightened, a flicker of frustration crossing her face. "You think you're some kind of hero, don't you? Swooping in, buying the manor, stealing my spotlight. But this isn't about you, it's about Michael. My husband." Michael shifted, his jaw tight. "Vanessa, this isn't about taking sides. Mom's doing something good. Why can't you see that?" Vanessa's eyes flashed, but Eleanor raised a hand, her voice gentle but firm. "Let's not make this about sides. Michael. Vanessa, I'm not trying to steal anything. I'm building something, a place where people matter, no matter their age or status. You could be part of that." Vanessa laughed, a brittle sound. "Part of it? You humiliated me, Eleanor. You took the manor, turned it into your stage. People are laughing at me now, saying my gala was a failure because of you." Eleanor's heart ached, not for Vanessa's pride, but for the pain beneath it. She saw it now, Vanessa's need for control, her fear of being overshadowed. I didn't set out to hurt you, Eleanor said softly. You pushed me out. Vanessa, I could have let that break me, but I chose to build instead. You can choose, too. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Vanessa's mask slipped. Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with something raw vulnerability. Perhaps, or shame. She looked away, her fingers tightening around her coffee cup. You don't know what it's like, she whispered. Always having to prove yourself. To be perfect. Eleanor leaned forward, her voice steady. I do know. I've spent my life proving myself to a world that said I was too old, too quiet, too ordinary. But I'm not invisible, Vanessa. And neither are you. Michael reached for Vanessa's hand, but she pulled away, her composure returning. I need time, she said, standing abruptly. This isn't over. She left, the bell above the cafe door jingling in her wake. Michael looked at Eleanor, his face heavy with conflict. I'm sorry, Mom. I thought she'd listen. Eleanor squeezed his arm, her smile soft. She heard me. Michael. That's a start. Back at the manor, Eleanor threw herself into her work, the cafe meeting fueling her determination. The Winter Festival's success had sparked new Idasa's spring concert series, a scholarship fund for local students, even a memory cafe for those with dementia. She met with Clara and George Daly, their enthusiasm a mirror of her own. The manor was alive, its walls echoing with laughter and plans. But Vanessa's words lingered, a reminder that the battle wasn't won. Eleanor knew her daughter-in-law wasn't ready to let go of her anger, and Michael's loyalty was still torn. She invited him to help plan the spring concert, hoping to anchor him to the manor's mission. He agreed, spending evenings designing posters and contacting local musicians. His presence was a balm, but Eleanor sensed his hesitation, as if he were waiting for Vanessa's next move. One afternoon, a delivery arrived at the menorah box of old photographs, sent anonymously. Eleanor opened it to find pictures of her and Michael from years past, Michael as a toddler, grinning in her arms. The two of them at his high school graduation, her face beaming with pride. At the bottom was a note in Vanessa's handwriting. He's your son, but he's my husband. Don't forget that. The note was a jab, but the photos softened its sting. Eleanor sat in the library. The images spread before her, and let herself remember. She'd raised Michael alone, pouring her heart into every moment. Vanessa's claim didn't diminish that it couldn't, but it was a reminder that the manor, for all its success, couldn't heal every wound. Eleanor called Michael that evening, her voice calm but firm. I got the photos, she said. They're beautiful. But Vanessa's wrong if she thinks this is about ownership. You're not a prize to be won, Michael. Your family. He was quiet for a long moment. I know, Mom. I'm trying to figure this out. I love her, but I love you, too. I don't want to lose either of you. Eleanor's heart ached, but she didn't push. Just keep showing up, she said. That's enough for now. The spring concert series took shape, each event a celebration of local talent. Eleanor invited seniors to perform alongside younger artists, creating a tapestry of voices that filled the manor with life. The community responded with enthusiasm, tickets selling out weeks in advance. Eleanor moved through the preparations with a quiet strength, her silver hair a beacon in the bustling halls. But Vanessa's silence grew louder, her absence a storm cloud on the horizon. Clara, ever observant, noticed Eleanor's tension. She'll come around, Clara said one evening. as they hung posters in the foyer. Or she won't. Either way, you're doing something incredible. Eleanor smiled, but her heart was heavy. She wanted Vanessa to see the manor not as a threat, but as a gift, a place where she, too, could belong. But that choice was Vanessa's, and Eleanor could only wait. The first concert arrived, and the manor glowed with anticipation. Eleanor stood at the entrance, greeting guests in a deep purple dress that caught the light. Michael was there, helping with the sound system, his smile genuine. As the music began, Eleanor felt a surge of hope. The manor was her legacy, but it was also a bridge between generations. Between her and Michael. Perhaps even between her and Vanessa. As the final notes faded, Eleanor took the stage, her voice warm. "Thank you for being here," she said. "This manor is a home for all of us. Let's keep building it together." The applause was thunderous, but Eleanor's eyes were on Michael, who stood at the back, clapping with pride. She didn't know what Vanessa's next move would be, but she knew this: the Rosewood Manor was her heart, and no one could take that from her. The spring concert series marked a turning point for the Rosewood Manor, cementing its place as a community cornerstone. Eleanor Grayson moved through the days with a quiet confidence, her silver hair a familiar sight as she greeted guests, planned events, and mentored her growing team. The manor was no longer just a venue, it was a living, breathing space where stories were shared, connections forged, and lives transformed. Yet, the unresolved tension with Vanessa lingered, a shadow Eleanor couldn't fully shake. Mornings at the manor were sacred. Eleanor arrived early, her footsteps soft on the polished floors, her notebook filled with plans for the future. She dreamed of expanding the manor's reach, perhaps a mobile program to bring workshops to seniors who couldn't travel, or a partnership with local schools to teach history through storytelling. The possibilities felt endless, each one a testament to her refusal to be sidelined. Clara and George were her anchors, their energy and loyalty a reminder that she wasn't alone. Clara, with her quick wit, handled logistics with ease, while George, the retired carpenter, took pride in maintaining the manor's beauty. "You've got a gift, Eleanor," George said one morning, sanding a new bench for the garden. "You make people feel seen." Eleanor smiled, her heart warming. "That's all I've ever wanted." Michael was a constant presence now, his commitment to the manor growing stronger. He'd taken on a leadership role, organizing a youth volunteer program that brought teenagers to the manor to learn from seniors. His enthusiasm was infectious, but Eleanor saw the strain in his eyes, the weight of balancing his loyalty to her with his marriage to Vanessa. She didn't push him, trusting that his heart would guide him. But Vanessa's silence was deafening. Since the cafe meeting, she'd made no further contact, her absence a calculated withdrawal. Eleanor heard whispers from mutual acquaintances Vanessa was planning a new venture, a high-profile art gallery opening to reassert her influence. It was another move in their unspoken chess game, and Eleanor braced herself for the fallout. One afternoon, as Eleanor sorted through volunteer applications, Michael arrived with a worried expression. "Mom, Vanessa's been talking to lawyers," he said, his voice low. "She's saying the manor's success is hurting her reputation. She's considering legal action." Eleanor's heart sank, but her face remained calm. "Legal action? On what grounds?" Michael shrugged, his frustration evident. "She's claiming you've slandered her, that you've turned the community against her. It's nonsense, but she's desperate." Eleanor set down her pen, her mind racing. Vanessa's threat was a reach, but it was also a sign of her unraveling. "Let her try," Eleanor said firmly. "The manor's books are clean, and my intentions are clear. She won't find anything to hold on to. Michael nodded, but his worry lingered. I just want this to stop. Mom, I want us to be a family again. Eleanor reached for his hand, her touch steady. We are a family, Michael. But families don't always agree. You're doing the right thing by being here. Don't let her pull you away. The conversation left Eleanor unsettled, but she refused to let it derail her. The Manor's next event was a memory cafe, a space for those with dementia to share stories and music with their families. Eleanor poured her heart into it, working with a local therapist to create a program that was both joyful and supportive. She invited participants personally, visiting nursing homes and community centers to spread the word. The Memory Cafe was a quiet success. The Manor's library was transformed with soft lighting and comfortable chairs, the air filled with the scent of lavender and the sound of gentle music. Families gathered, some laughing, some crying, as they shared memories with loved ones. Eleanor moved among them, her presence a quiet reassurance. She saw herself in the older participants, their strength undimmed despite their struggles, and it fueled her resolve. Michael was there, too, helping serve tea and listening to stories with a warmth that made Eleanor proud. After the event, he pulled her aside, his eyes bright. This place is changing people. Mom, I'm starting to see what you've been fighting for. Eleanor smiled, her heart full. It's not just about the Manor, Michael. It's about showing the world that no one's invisible, not me. Not these families. Not you. But the threat of Vanessa's legal action loomed. A week later, a letter arrived from a law firm, requesting a meeting to discuss potential grievances. Eleanor read it with Clara and George, her expression calm, but her mind sharp. She's grasping at straws, Clara said, tossing the letter onto the table. She's got nothing. George nodded, his weathered hands folded. You've got the community behind you, Eleanor. She can't touch that. Eleanor agreed to the meeting, determined to face Vanessa head-on. It was held at the law firm's office, a sterile space that felt worlds away from the Manor's warmth. Vanessa sat across from her, flanked by a lawyer who looked more bored than threatening. Michael was there, too, his face a mask of tension. The lawyer outlined Vanessa's claims: defamation, emotional distress, loss of social standing. Eleanor listened, her hands folded, her eyes never leaving Vanessa's. When it was her turn to speak, her voice was steady. I've done nothing but build a space for this community, she said. If Vanessa feels threatened by that, it's not my doing. It's hers. Vanessa's face flushed, but she said nothing. The lawyer sighed, admitting there was little evidence to support the claims. The meeting ended with no resolution, but Eleanor felt a quiet victory. Vanessa's desperation was clear, her threats hollow. Back at the Manor, Eleanor focused on the next event, a summer fair, to celebrate the community's diversity. She invited vendors from every corner of the city, from Somali food trucks to Irish folk bands. The planning was exhausting, but it kept her grounded, a reminder of why she'd fought for the Manor. Michael joined her, his commitment unwavering. I told Vanessa I'm all in with the Manor, he said one evening, as they set up tables in the courtyard. She's not happy, but I'm done letting her control me. Eleanor looked at him, her heart swelling. You're finding your way, Michael. That's all I've ever wanted. As the summer fair approached, Eleanor felt a shift. The Manor was no longer just her fight, it was a shared mission, a legacy that belonged to everyone who walked through its doors. Vanessa's threats, her anger, her need for control, they were fading in the face of something bigger. Eleanor Grayson had turned rejection into creation, and no one could take that from her. The summer fair was a triumph, transforming the Rosewood Manor into a vibrant tapestry of cultures and voices. Eleanor Grayson stood at the heart of it, her silver hair catching the sunlight as she moved among the stalls, greeting vendors and guests with a warmth that felt like home. The air was alive with the scents of grilled kebabs, fresh lemonade, and blooming roses. The manor's gardens a riot of color. Children laughed as they played games, while seniors shared stories under shaded tents. It was everything Eleanor had dreamed of, a place where everyone belonged. But beneath the joy, Eleanor carried a quiet vigilance. Vanessa's legal threats had fizzled, but her silence was a storm waiting to break. Michael had thrown himself into the manor's work, his presence a steady anchor. But Eleanor knew his marriage was strained. She saw it in the way he checked his phone, his brow furrowing at messages from Vanessa. Eleanor didn't push, but she prayed he'd find the strength to choose his own path. Clara, ever the optimist, was a whirlwind of energy during the fair. She darted between stalls, coordinating vendors and snapping photos for the manor's new website. "This is your legacy, Eleanor," she said, her eyes bright. "You've changed this town." Eleanor smiled, her heart full but heavy. "It's not just mine, Clara. It's ours." The fair's success drew attention, with local news outlets covering the event and praising the manor's role in uniting the community. Eleanor was invited to speak at a city council meeting, where she advocated for more funding for senior programs. Her voice, once dismissed as too soft, now carried weight. She was no longer the woman cast out of a party. She was Eleanor Grayson, the heart of the Rosewood Manor. But Vanessa's shadow lingered. A week after the fair, Michael arrived at the manor with a heavy expression. "She's leaving," he said, his voice raw. "Vanessa's moving to New York. She says she needs a fresh start." Eleanor's heart sank, but she kept her face calm. "And you? What do you want?" Michael looked at her, his eyes tired but clear. "I'm staying. I want to be here. With you. With the manor. This is home." The words were a gift, but they came with a cost. Eleanor knew Michael's decision would deepen the rift with Vanessa, perhaps irreparably. She hugged him, her touch fierce and tender. "You're enough," she whispered. "You've always been enough." The days that followed were bittersweet. Michael moved into a small apartment near the manor, throwing himself into its work with a passion that mirrored Eleanor's. He led a new Initiativia mentorship program pairing seniors with at-risk youth, teaching skills like woodworking and storytelling. Eleanor watched him grow into the man she'd always known he could be, her heart swelling with pride. But Vanessa's departure left a void. Eleanor heard through mutual friends that she'd launched her art gallery in New York, a flashy venture that drew influencers and headlines. Part of Eleanor wanted to reach out, to offer an olive branch, but she knew it wasn't time. Vanessa needed to find her own way, just as Eleanor had. The manor's next project was a fall lecture series, featuring local historians and activists. Eleanor curated the lineup, choosing speakers who'd faced adversity and risen above it. She wanted the series to inspire, to show that resilience wasn't bound by age or circumstance. The community responded with enthusiasm, filling the manor's halls each week. One evening, as Eleanor prepared for a lecture, a surprise visitor arrived, Vanessa's mother, Lorraine. She was a petite woman in her 60s, her face lined with worry. "Eleanor," she said, her voice trembling, "I need to talk to you about Vanessa." Eleanor led her to the library, offering tea and a seat by the fire. Lorraine's story poured out Vanessa's struggles in New York, her loneliness, her refusal to admit defeat. "She's hurting," Lorraine said. "She won't say it, but she misses Michael." She misses you. Eleanor listened, her heart torn. She saw Vanessa's pain now, not just her anger. I never wanted to push her away, Eleanor said. But she made choices. Lorraine. So did I? Lorraine nodded, her eyes wet. I know. I thought you should know. The conversation stayed with Eleanor, stirring a mix of guilt and resolve. She didn't want Vanessa to suffer, but she wouldn't apologize for building the manor. It was her truth, her strength, her legacy. Still, she wrote Vanessa a letter that night. Her words simple but sincere. The manor's doors are open if you ever want to come back. We're family. Vanessa. That doesn't change. She didn't expect a reply, and none came. But the act of writing freed something in Eleanor, a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying. She focused on the lecture series, pouring her heart into each event. The manor glowed with purpose, its halls filled with voices that mattered. Michael thrived, his bond with Eleanor deepening. They spent evenings planning new programs, laughing over shared memories. One night, as they locked up the manor, Michael paused, his eyes soft. I'm proud of you, Mom. I don't say it enough. Eleanor's throat tightened. You're here. That's more than enough. The fall lecture series ended with a celebration. The manor packed with guests who'd become like family. Eleanor stood at the front, her voice steady as she thanked them. This manor is a home, she said. Not because of its walls, but because of you. Thank you for building it with me. The applause was warm, but Eleanor's eyes were on Michael, who stood beside her, his smile a mirror of her own. Vanessa's absence was a quiet ache, but Eleanor knew she'd done what she could. The Rosewood Manor was her heart, her proof that rejection could be transformed into something beautiful. And she wasn't done yet. The Rosewood Manor stood tall as winter returned, its walls a testament to Eleanor Grayson's resilience. A year had passed since Vanessa's rejection, since Eleanor had turned humiliation into triumph. The manor was now a cornerstone of the community, its calendar filled with events that bridged generations and healed hearts. Eleanor, at 71, moved through its halls with a quiet grace, her silver hair a beacon of strength. But the story wasn't finished. There were still threads to weave, wounds to mend. Mornings were still her sanctuary. She'd walk the manor's grounds, her breath visible in the frosty air, her notebook filled with dreams for the future. A literacy program for immigrants, a theater workshop for seniors, a garden where children could learn to grow their own food. The ideas never stopped. Clara and George were her partners, their loyalty unwavering. But Michael was her heart. His presence at the manor had become a constant, his laughter a reminder of the boy she'd raised. Vanessa's absence, though, was a quiet ache. Eleanor hadn't heard from her since the letter, but Lorraine's visit had planted a seed of hope. She didn't expect reconciliation not yet, but she held space for it. A door left ajar. Michael, too, carried the weight of his fractured marriage. He'd settled into his new life. But Eleanor saw the longing in his eyes when Vanessa's name came up. One morning, as Eleanor planned a holiday gala, a letter arrived. The envelope was simple, no return address, but the handwriting was unmistakably Vanessa's. Eleanor's hands trembled as she opened it, her heart bracing for another jab. Instead, she found an apology. Eleanor, I was wrong. I let my pride blind me. The manor, what you've built, it's beautiful. I don't know if I can be part of it, but I'm trying to understand. Thank you for not giving up on Michael. Or me. The words were a shock, a crack in the wall between them. Eleanor sat in the library, the letter in her lap, and let herself feel the weight of it. Vanessa wasn't asking for forgiveness, not directly, but she was reaching out. It was enough. Eleanor shared the letter with Michael, watching his face shift from surprise to cautious hope. "She's coming back for the holidays," he said, his voice soft. "She wants to see the manor." "To see you?" Eleanor nodded, her heart tight. "Then let's welcome her." The holiday gala was planned with care, a celebration of the manor's first year. Eleanor chose a theme of unity, decorating the halls with candles, evergreens, and ornaments crafted by local children. She invited the community, from the seniors who'd shared their stories to the teenagers who'd volunteered their time. The manor glowed with warmth, a beacon in the winter night. Michael helped with the preparations, his energy infectious. He and Eleanor spent evenings wrapping gifts for a toy drive, their laughter filling the manor. "This feels like home, Mom," he said one night, his eyes bright. "I didn't realize how much I needed it." Eleanor squeezed his hand, her heart full. "You've always had a home here." The night of the gala arrived, and the manor was alive with music and light. Eleanor wore a deep red gown, her silver hair swept into an elegant updo. She greeted guests with a smile, her presence a quiet anchor. Michael was at her side, his pride evident. And then, just as the evening began, Vanessa walked in. She looked different, her blonde hair softer, her face less guarded. She wore a simple black dress, no trace of her usual flash. Eleanor met her eyes, and for a moment, the world stilled. Vanessa approached, her steps hesitant. "Eleanor," she said, her voice low. "Thank you for letting me come." Eleanor took her hand, her touch gentle but firm. "Your family, Vanessa. You're always welcome." The words broke something open. Vanessa's eyes glistened, and she nodded, unable to speak. Michael joined them, his arm around Vanessa, his face a mix of relief and hope. The gala unfolded around them, a blur of laughter, music, and shared stories. Eleanor watched Vanessa move through the crowd, her usual confidence replaced by a quiet curiosity. She listened to a senior's story, helped a child with a craft, even laughed with Clara. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a start. As the night drew to a close, Eleanor took the stage, her voice warm and steady. "A year ago, I was told I didn't belong," she said, her eyes sweeping the room. "But I found my place here, with all of you. This manor is more than a building. It's a home, a heart, a promise that no one is invisible." The applause was thunderous, but Eleanor's eyes were on Michael and Vanessa, standing together at the back. Michael's arm was around her, and Vanessa's face held a softness Eleanor hadn't seen before. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Later, as the guests left, Vanessa approached Eleanor alone. "I was wrong," she said simply. "I saw you as a threat, but you're incredible. I don't know if I can be like you, but I want to try." Eleanor smiled, her heart light. "You don't need to be like me, Vanessa. Just be you." The manor stood quiet as the last guests departed, its halls filled with the echoes of the night. Eleanor locked the doors, her steps light. She'd turned rejection into creation, pain into purpose, and a fractured family into something whole. The Rosewood Manor was her legacy, but it was also a Brigetto Michael. To Vanessa, to a community that saw her. And as she stood in the silent hall, Eleanor Grayson knew she'd never be cast out again.